The intergalactic marketplace stretched out before Adam Kessler, a labyrinth of neon lights, strange alien species, and massive trading hubs that hummed with the sounds of commerce. He stood in a crowded section, the air thick with the scent of unfamiliar spices and metals. This was the edge of space where anything could be bought and sold. Goods, information, and even lives. The Zara, a cold, calculating species with dark, polished skin and glowing blue eyes, were among the most powerful in the galaxy. They had conquered planets and enslaved countless species, including humans. Today, Kessler was one of those humans, another item for sale. A massive auction stage stood before him, guarded by armed Zara soldiers. Other human captives stood in line, their hands bound, their faces resigned to their fate. Adam, however, wasn't like the others. His mind was sharp and his spirit wasn't broken. He had been trained for combat back on Earth, part of a special forces unit designed for the toughest missions. But nothing could have prepared him for the harshness of this alien world. "You are here to be sold," one of the Zara guards had told him earlier. His voice was mechanical, lacking any emotion. "You will serve the highest bidder." Adam's stomach tightened. He had no idea who would buy him or what they would do with him, but he knew this much. He wasn't going down without a fight. Humanity might be under attack, but it wasn't weak. Not by a long shot. He stood still, eyes scanning the vast crowd. There were humanoid aliens with multiple limbs, reptilian beings with sharp claws, and floating creatures that glowed with an eerie light. The Zara had a reputation for brutality, and they saw the human race as little more than tools to be used. Kessler's heart burned with a desire to show them just how wrong they were. As the auction began, the crowd erupted in eager whispers. The auctioneer, a small alien with a silver robe and beady eyes, stepped forward. "Next we have a human soldier," he said, his voice amplified by a translator, trained in the finest military tactics, capable of adapting to any situation. A true asset in any conflict. Adam was pushed forward into the spotlight, his hands still bound by the cold metallic restraints. The crowd quieted as they examined him, their alien eyes scanning him with interest. He held his head high, refusing to show any fear. He would not let them see him break. "Who will start the bidding?" the auctioneer asked, raising his hand as the holographic display above flashed with human soldiers in different poses. Adam clenched his fists, every part of him wanting to break free from this place. But he knew that now was not the time. He had to play the part of the defeated soldier, or else they would kill him before he had the chance to escape. The Zara might think they owned him, but he knew they had no idea what they were really dealing with. A loud voice from the back of the crowd made Kessler's heart race. "I'll take him," the voice called out. "I offer 5 million credits for this one." The voice belonged to a tall alien, his green scales glistening under the marketplace's lights. He stood surrounded by a small group of armed guards, and his eyes gleamed with greed. Adam felt a surge of anger, but he kept his face neutral. 5 million credits, the auctioneer repeated. "Going once, going twice?" 10 million, another voice interjected. Even louder this time. The bidding grew fierce, each new offer rising higher than the last. Adam stood still, trying not to show how much it hurt to be treated like this. He had heard stories of humans being sold to warlords, used as soldiers in endless battles, and worse. He didn't know what this particular buyer wanted him for, but he was determined to survive it. Finally, a voice cut through the air like a knife. 50 million credits. "I'll take him." The entire crowd went silent. The alien who had spoken was the most imposing figure Adam had seen all day. A massive, armored being with glowing red eyes. His voice was deep, rich with authority, and his presence commanded respect. Even the Zara seemed to hesitate before acknowledging the offer. The auctioneer nodded quickly. "Sold," he said, and just like that, Adam Kessler was bought. The massive alien approached, his steps heavy and deliberate. He reached out and grabbed Adam's arm, pulling him away from the auction stage with surprising gentleness for someone so intimidating. Kessler didn't resist, though his mind raced. He had to stay calm to think of a way out. "Follow me," the armored alien said. His voice was low, almost too calm. "I will take you to your new home." The journey to the alien ship was brief, but it felt like hours. Kessler was led through a maze of hallways, his mind alert for any opportunity to escape. The corridors were dark and the air was thin and cold. He was shoved into a holding cell, the door locking behind him with a soft click. For a moment, he let out a breath. He was trapped, but not for long. He had trained for situations like this. His military training had prepared him to endure. Now he had to find a way to take control. The alien who had purchased him, the warlord, turned to leave without a word. Before he reached the door, however, Kessler spoke. "What are you going to do with me?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with defiance. The warlord paused but didn't turn around. "You're going to fight for me," he said simply. "That's what you're worth." Kessler's mind whirled. A soldier for an alien warlord. It was the same fate many humans had suffered, used as pawns in intergalactic conflicts they didn't understand. But Kessler wasn't like them. He wasn't just a tool to be used. As the door slid shut, he sat down in the cold cell, his eyes fixed on the small window that looked out at the stars. He wasn't going to let them win. He wasn't going to let humanity be nothing more than a commodity. He was going to fight back. The Zara may have thought they owned him, but they were about to learn the hard way that humans were far more than they could ever imagine. Adam Kessler awoke to a cold, dimly lit room. For a moment he wondered if he was still trapped in the same nightmare. The last thing he remembered was being sold to the warlord, a powerful alien who seemed to think of humans as nothing more than tools for battle. He shifted in his cell, feeling the stiffness in his muscles from hours of lying on the cold metal floor. The walls of his cell were made of some kind of strong material, thick enough to block any sound or light from the outside world. The air was thin and smelled faintly of machinery. There was no escape. Not yet. But Adam's mind was racing, calculating his options, looking for any weakness in the system around him. It was what he had been trained to do. His military training had taught him to think fast, act quickly, and adapt to any situation. And this situation, this prison cell, was no different. He had to keep his mind sharp or he would lose before he even began. His first few hours had been spent observing the guards, tall, heavily armed Zara warriors with their glowing blue eyes and sleek, dark armor. They were everywhere. There were 2 stationed at the entrance to his cell, their sharp gazes fixed on him. He noticed how they communicated with each other using low growls and clicking sounds. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical. If there was one thing Kessler had learned from his time in the military, it was how to spot weaknesses in the enemy. And right now the Zara were his enemy. The first few days were torturous. He was kept locked in his cell, with little food and barely any water. His only source of entertainment was the endless buzzing of the overhead lights and the distant hum of the ship's engines. But even in this isolation, Adam refused to let despair take hold of him. He knew that he was not the only human captive on this ship. There were others, and if he could free them, they would have a better chance of escaping. One evening, after what felt like an eternity of waiting, Adam heard footsteps outside his cell. He quickly lay still, pretending to be asleep. The footsteps stopped outside his door, and the sound of a key sliding into the lock made his heart race. He could feel the tension in his body, every muscle alert and ready to spring into action. The door opened, and a figure stepped inside. It was a young human, one of the other prisoners. His name was Michael, and he had been with Adam since the auction. He was one of the many humans who had been bought and sold by the Zara. Unlike Adam, who had spent years in the military, Michael was just an ordinary man, someone who had been picked up off the street, dragged into the horrors of the galaxy's black market. His eyes were wide with fear, and he looked at Adam with desperation. I can't do this," Michael whispered, his voice trembling. "I don't know how to fight. I don't even know how to survive out there. They're going to use me like they used the others." Adam remained still, watching the young man carefully. "You don't have to fight right now," he said quietly, his voice calm but firm. "But we can't just wait here to be used like that. We need to think, plan, and stay sharp. We're not going to let them break us." Michael's eyes widened. You think we can escape?" "I know we can," Adam replied. "But we have to work together." For the next few days, Adam and Michael worked in secret. Every chance they got, they'd exchange information, plan their next move, and look for any weakness they could exploit. They talked in whispers, careful not to alert the guards, who were always watching. Adam was careful not to reveal too much too soon, knowing that they had to be smart about their escape. He had learned long ago that survival wasn't just about physical strength. It was about intelligence, adaptability, and patience. One night, as they huddled together, Adam noticed something strange. The guards were behaving differently. They were distracted, murmuring to each other in their alien language. Their attention seemed to be focused elsewhere, on something or someone outside the ship. Adam's sharp instincts kicked in. This was his chance. He motioned for Michael to stay quiet, and then he crept to the door of the cell. It was a long shot, but Adam had nothing to lose. He ran his hands over the lock, his fingers searching for any weakness in the mechanism. He knew the guards were just outside, but he had to try. His military training had taught him how to pick locks quickly and efficiently. It wasn't easy, but it was his best shot. Minutes passed and Adam's heart raced. The sounds of the guards' voices grew louder, and he knew time was running out. With one final twist, he heard the satisfying click of the lock turning. He pushed the door open just a crack, enough to slip through unnoticed. Michael followed behind him, his eyes wide with fear but also with a glimmer of hope. They moved silently through the dark hallways, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick walls. Adam led the way, his senses heightened, his every step calculated. He knew the layout of the ship from the briefings he had received before being captured. He also knew that they had to reach the central control room if they had any chance of disabling the ship's security systems and escaping. As they moved deeper into the ship, Adam noticed more Zara soldiers. They were patrolling, unaware of the two humans creeping through the shadows. Adam held up his hand, signaling Michael to stop. The hallway was clear, but up ahead there was a security checkpoint, a heavily guarded area with armed Zara warriors and surveillance cameras. Adam had to think quickly. They couldn't just walk past it. They'd be caught in seconds. "I have an idea," he whispered to Michael. "We need to take out the cameras and we need to do it quietly." Michael looked at him with uncertainty, but Adam didn't give him time to argue. He grabbed a small device from his belt, one of the few things the Zara hadn't stripped from him. It was a small EMP generator, capable of disabling electronic systems for a short time. If he could get close enough to the cameras, he could disable them long enough to slip by. It was risky, but they didn't have any other options. They crouched low, moving carefully toward the checkpoint. Adam's heart pounded in his chest as he slid the EMP device into position. He activated it, and within seconds the cameras flickered and went dark. The Zara guards didn't notice, still too distracted by their own conversation. With the cameras down, Adam motioned for Michael to follow him. They quickly moved through the checkpoint, staying low and out of sight. The harder part was yet to come. They had to reach the control room, where the heart of the ship's systems was located. If they could disable the security systems, they'd have a chance at escaping. But Adam knew that if they were caught now, there would be no turning back. Cliffhanger. Just as they reached the control room doors, Adam heard a faint sound behind them, footsteps fast and deliberate. Someone had noticed the cameras were down. The chase was about to begin. Adam's heart raced as the footsteps echoed behind them. Someone was coming, fast and determined. He signaled to Michael, who froze, eyes wide with fear. There was no time to explain. Adam grabbed Michael's arm and pulled him into a small maintenance alcove, hidden from view. They crouched low, holding their breath, praying that the Zara soldiers wouldn't notice them. The footsteps grew louder, closer. The hallway outside was silent except for the distant hum of the ship's engines. Adam's mind raced, calculating their next move. The Zara were relentless hunters, and they didn't take kindly to any sort of disobedience. They would tear the ship apart to find them if necessary. He had to think fast. The sound stopped right outside their alcove. Adam dared not even move a muscle. Michael, too, held his breath, barely making a sound. Through the thin wall, Adam could hear the Zara guard growl in frustration. They should be nearby, the guard muttered in their strange, clicking language. Find them now. The words sent a chill down Adam's spine. There was no way to stay hidden for long. But maybe they didn't need to hide. Maybe it was time to make a stand. The footsteps faded as the guards moved further down the hallway, searching in vain. Adam gave it a few seconds, then quietly pulled Michael to his feet. They had no choice now. They couldn't let themselves get caught. They had to get to the control room, or all this would be for nothing. Move fast. Stay quiet, Adam whispered, his voice steady. We can still do this. They crept down the hallway, moving with purpose. Adam had memorized the layout of the ship from the maps he had studied earlier, and he knew the central control room wasn't far. It was the nerve center of the entire vessel. If they could get there, they could disable the security systems and give themselves a fighting chance. The corridor was empty. The guards were distracted, still searching for them. Adam's pulse quickened as they neared the control room doors. They were massive, metallic, and sealed tight with a security lock. This was it, the heart of the ship. If they could break in and disable the ship's systems, the Zara would lose control of their operations. Adam approached the door and quickly assessed the security system. It was a high-tech lock, far more advanced than anything he had dealt with on Earth. But he had been trained for moments like this. He pulled out a small device from his pocket, a universal decryption tool designed to bypass even the toughest of security measures. He attached it to the door's control panel and started working quickly. Every second counted. His hands moved with precision, fingers flying across the device's small interface. He could feel the sweat starting to bead on his forehead, but he refused to let it distract him. They had come too far to back down now. Michael stood behind him, his eyes scanning the hallway nervously. "Are you sure this is going to work?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It will," Adam replied, though even he wasn't sure, but he couldn't afford to doubt, not now. "Just stay quiet and be ready." The device beeped, and for a brief moment Adam thought they were caught. But the light on the device turned green. A soft hiss came from the door as it unlocked. Adam gave Michael a quick nod, and together they pushed the heavy doors open. The control room was vast, filled with rows of blinking consoles, holographic screens, and alien technology. It was like something out of a dream, complex and advanced far beyond anything humanity had ever created. But there was no time to admire the technology. They had a mission. Adam stepped inside, scanning the room for the central control hub. It was located at the far end, guarded by several Zara soldiers who were focused on the control systems. Adam's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. There were at least 5 guards in the room, all armed with energy weapons and protective armor. He didn't know if they could take them all out without raising an alarm, but he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't going down without a fight. "We need to get to that console," Adam whispered to Michael. "That's our only shot." Michael nodded, but his face was pale. "There are too many of them. We'll never make it." "We don't need to make it all the way," Adam said, his voice steady. "Just create a distraction." "Distract them?" Michael asked, confused. "How?" Adam's eyes scanned the room again, looking for anything they could use. Then his gaze settled on one of the maintenance panels on the wall, not far from the guards. If they could disable the power for just a few moments, it might be enough to give them a chance to reach the console. "I'll handle the guards," Adam said. "You hit the panel. Just make sure it works." Before Michael could protest, Adam slipped behind a column, drawing a small, high-powered energy pistol from his belt. He didn't want to use it unless he had to. But if it meant getting to the control room's main console, he would. The guards continued to focus on their work, unaware of the 2 humans moving in the shadows. Adam moved swiftly, positioning himself in a spot where he could make the first move. With a deep breath, he raised the pistol and fired a quick shot at the nearest guard's weapon. The energy blast struck with precision, causing the guard to drop his weapon in surprise. The room erupted into chaos. "Alert! Alert!" the lead guard shouted, reaching for his communicator. But it was too late. The power in the room flickered as the lights went out, leaving the soldiers disoriented and vulnerable. Michael scrambled towards the maintenance panel, his hands shaking but determined. He pried open the panel and began working on the wires inside. He had no idea what he was doing, but Adam had shown him the basics. Just a few quick cuts and the power would be down. Meanwhile, Adam took cover behind a console, using his pistol to fire at the remaining guards. He aimed for their weapons first, knowing that without their energy weapons, the guards would be less of a threat. One by one, the soldiers were disarmed, but still they fought back, their claws swiping at the air. Adam's pulse raced as he heard the whirring sound of the maintenance panel shutting down. "It's done!" Michael shouted. "The power's out!" With the lights flickering, the guards were momentarily blinded. It was the perfect opportunity. Adam dashed towards the control console, his heart pounding in his chest. The Zara soldiers tried to recover, but Adam was faster. He reached the console and began typing in the override codes he had memorized during his time as a prisoner. It wasn't easy. The alien technology was complex, but Adam had always been good at solving puzzles. As he typed in the final code, a loud beep echoed through the room. The ship's security systems went offline, the red lights turning off and the doors unlocking. But just as Adam thought they had succeeded, a loud voice rang out from the doorway. "Stop right there." Adam turned to face the speaker, his eyes locking with the warlord himself, the massive alien who had bought him. The warlord stood in the doorway, flanked by his guards, his glowing red eyes locked onto Adam with fury. "You think you can destroy everything I've built?" the warlord snarled. "You are nothing but an insect. I will crush you." Adam's heart raced, but he stood tall. "You paid for me. Now face the wrath of humanity." Cliffhanger. The warlord's guards charged forward, and Adam knew the fight was far from over. This would be their most difficult battle yet.